I'm so excited to have you here. It's our first seminar of the year of 2025. In the past, we've done a lot of in-person seminars. This webinar I thought would be fun because, we're the middle of January, it's cold outside, and it's just the best way for us all to get together and I can share some amazing information. So thank you for joining, spending some time with me tonight. I'm going to make sure that it is the best use of your time, and we're not going to waste time, so we're going to jump right in. And we'll get through some information. Like I said, if you missed it when I mentioned a moment ago, we have the chat available. So if you have questions or anything, you can pop it into the chat. And I will get the message. I will do my best to address it either as we go or at the end. We'll have some time for that as well. And if you see me kind of glance over to my left, that's what I'm doing, just looking at the chat window. So let's jump right in. Let's get rolling and jump right in. So we're here talking about selling for the first time sellers or not for a long time. What's a not for a long time seller? Well, it might be somebody, might be you. You've lived in a house for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you haven't sold a house in a long time. So we're here talking about selling. First time sellers. You might have bought a house a year or two, three ago, and now you're thinking about making a move, but you've never sold a home before. So really, we're talking to people, we're talking to you, you haven't sold a house. But really, even if you have sold a house and you wanted to join in because you're thinking about it or want some information in that, this will apply to you as well. So we're talking all things home selling tonight. We're going to go through all that great information. Let me give you a quick background on me and who I am. So my name is Jordan Glazer. I'm with Remax Realtron. Remax is the number one global brand in real estate, and Remax Realtron, we have 10 offices here throughout the GTA. I have an office. I work in North York here at Yonge and Sheppard, or just west of Yonge Street on Sheppard. I've been selling real estate for about 12 or 13 years now, so over 10 years of experience working in the GTA specifically. So, my office is here in the heart of Toronto in North York. I do a lot of work all up the core here, so from York region, Thornhill, Richmond Hill, all the way down to the lake. And have been doing so for, like I said, 12, 13 years. Very proud of being a donor to Sick Kids Hospital. With Remax, it's a huge supporter of the Sick Kids Hospital and the CMN, Children's Miracle Network. So I'm a big supporter of that, and I always love to throw that in because it's such a great organization. But that's me in a nutshell. Enough about me. If you have any questions about me, again, throw it into the chat, or we can always connect after this. But I don't want to sit here talking about me because I want to get to the information that's important to you guys. So let's keep moving forward. So like I mentioned, we're here talking about first-time sellers or long-time non-sellers. Is this you? So as you sit and as you join and as you thought about joining us today, is selling something that you either have never done or haven't done for a long time. And it has here, so many times we hear about first-time buyers. First-time buyers is a hot topic in real estate. But first-time sellers is a group that's never really spoken about. And I think it's really important, selling a home, whether it's your personal home, whether it's an investment, is a big and important job. For most of us, this is our largest asset. This is our largest investment. It is our retirement in some cases. It is our inheritance or our kids' inheritance. So there's a lot of weight riding on the sale of property. So it's a very important thing to undertake. And I think talking about this for first-time sellers, or if you haven't sold for a long time, to know what to look out for, or what to be wary of or cautious of, or keeping your eyes open for is really important. So if you're a first-time seller, you're in the right place. You may have bought a home or live in the home for, like I mentioned, for a long, long time, whether it's 10 or 30 or 50 years. You may have a parent who has lived in their house for 10 or 20 or 50 years and is ready to sell their home and don't know where to start. You may have never sold and they might not have sold for a long time and you don't know where to start or where to look. Well, you're in the right place. We're going to talk now from where you start to where you end up. So we're going to go through the whole run there. So what can you expect from here tonight? Like I said from the top, we're not going to take too much of your time. I want to make sure this is the best use of your time and you can get the best information. But we're going to start, we're going to talk about the market. We're going to do a quick market update. We're going to talk about what's going on, what happened in, to exit 2024. And as we get into 2025, where are we and what's going on? We're going to talk about some market trends, what's happening, what do we see happening, as everybody loves to do. We're going to talk about some predictions. What do I see happening over the course of the next few months in the year 2025, and what's going to happen? Where do we see the spring market and what's happening with the seasons of real estate? Interest rates we'll touch on because it's always a big topic, especially these days. There's a lot going on with interest rates, as well as some recent changes that happened at the end of 2024 that could have a great effect on real estate. Some CMHC changes and some mortgage changes and things like that. Then we're going to jump right into the selling process, talking about what's the plan, what's the process, where do you go, what are those tips to have the best success or set yourself up for the best success when selling your home. All of those things we're going to go over. We're going to talk about choosing an agent. We're going to talk about marketing. We're going to talk about home preparation. We're going to talk about pricing strategy, which is super important. We're going to go through all of that. We've got some time, hopefully, for some questions at the end, and leave you with a little bit better of an understanding of where to go, where to start if you're thinking about selling and ready to kind of embark down that road. So that's what you can expect out of this. Let's jump right into the market update. Let's talk a little bit about what happened last year and as we exited 24, and now as we're heading into 2025, what's going on. So 2024 was a very interesting year in real estate. We had some ups, we had some downs, we had some left turns, some right turns. Things were all over the place. The one thing that we saw most common is there were several interest rate announcements throughout the year. And after the first quarter or so, we started to see interest rates reducing. So we had a consistent stream of reductions in interest rates, which, interestingly, what a lot of people thought and what a lot of people were expecting is when the rates would come down, we would see an automatic impact on the market. And I think the market is a little bit slower to react to things like that. And we'll look at that in a couple of minutes. We've got a little bit more info on that. But let's really take a look at the market in general. Sales, inventory, what's been going on in the market in 2024. So as you see here behind me, we've got homes available for sale December 2024. So you see the full year there. And that top purple line here is 2024. So what's interesting to note about inventory here, homes available on the market in 2024, is we actually see after the first 4 or 5 months of the year, we have some of the highest levels of inventory that we've had in the last 7 or 8 years noted in the chart here. That's really interesting because, real estate, obviously we look at a lot of supply and demand, and it's an economic basis that we can start at and look from there. And generally, as supply goes up, demand shrinks, which starts to provide a softening in prices, right? So let's keep in mind right here that as we went through the second half of the year, we saw inventory start to creep up. At the end of the year in December, we had over 15,000 units for sale on the market. And this is in the Toronto Real Estate Board, detached houses, condos, just an overall picture. Now, if we switch over to the other side here and we look at what was happening with sales. So our sales this year were here, this purple line again, which was almost for the greater part of the year on the bottom end of sales. So our transactions this year were actually quite low. The market was a little bit slower than we're used to, than we've seen for the last few years. I mean, this red line here, you see that spike 2021. That was, towards the middle of COVID. The market was on fire, and things were super hot. We had over 15,000 sales here in the month of March, right? So that year was the peak. And now we're seeing things have slowed down in terms of transactions. So sales are a little bit lower, inventory is up. So like I mentioned, what we would expect is that prices would start to soften. Now we have seen a little bit of a softening in prices, but what's interesting to look at as we jump here is that the average monthly sale price is actually right up at the top in some of our best months. So that red line again was 2021 when we saw that big spike. But our average sale price is actually not doing so bad. So it's an interesting thing to look at. Inventory is up, sales are low, yet prices have maintained fairly steady um, over the course of the year and in comparison to the last few years. And I think that that has a lot to do with the demand that we have in the GTA and in the city of Toronto or Toronto and the surrounding areas. You know, we have so much immigration, we have so much population coming into Canada, and the majority of them are coming here to Toronto. And that's providing some stability and some, a basis for the market to work off of. And that's why I believe, although we have seen things soften a little bit, we haven't seen major shifts. One of the things that I always like to say and to keep in mind as we look at some of these charts is these are averages. Um, every neighborhood and every housing type operates a little bit different. Each one is its own living and breathing organism in a way. So if you're looking at this thinking like, oh my God, I know the average price here says it's $1,067,000. My house is worth way more, or a house hasn't sold for $1 million in my neighborhood in 7 years. You're probably right. This is just the average. So at the end, I've got my contact info. You have my info anyways. If you want to get an exact or a more detailed analysis like this of what's happened and what's happening in your specific area, shoot me a message after and we can put that together and I can send that over to you so that you can have a better idea of what's happening with your specific house type in your specific neighborhood. These are just averages just to get a sense of what's happening in the market. With the overall picture. We want to look at it overall, and then once we get that, we can really narrow it in and zoom it in on your specific neighborhood, on your specific house type, so that you have that best information. And this is really important information because this is where everything starts once you think, hey, maybe we're going to sell the house. Excuse me. So that's why I go through this. That's why this is so important, is because it all starts here. You need to have a strong idea of what's going on in the market in your neighborhood. What are houses selling for and what's your house worth? So like I said, if you have questions on this for your house, shoot me a message. We'll do a full detailed analysis on your specific house and your specific neighborhood to make sure that you've got all the best information. Just check the chat quickly. All right, so let's look at those are the numbers in terms of sales, the important numbers. Let's look at it at a market summary and just say what really happened over the course of the year and what's happening now. So 2024, like we spoke about, we saw an increase of properties on the market. We have that over 15,000 properties on the market. What does this do and what does this mean for the market? Well, prices have maintained fairly stably as an overall average. And it really speaks to, like I said, the buyer demand that is out there in the market right now. And we have the ability to track listings that are available on the market like we just looked at. There's no real way for us to sit and look at what's the demand sitting on the market. How many buyers are out there looking at houses in my neighborhood or houses like mine or on the averages overall. So unfortunately, we don't have a way to really look at that. But what we can do is we can look at more detailed analysis of properties that have listed and sold in the neighborhoods. I do a lot of research. I speak to a lot of agents about how activity is being on listings. I have listings that I monitor traffic and activity daily to see how things are reacting to the market. And one of the things that we saw all the way through 2024 for sure is that although there were a couple periods where the market shifted, the underlying tone was that there are buyers out there. Buyers are looking to buy. 2024 saw them go from sitting on the fence to starting to gain a little bit more confidence to jump into the market as those interest rate announcements kept coming in and rates started to come down a little bit. We also saw, talk about the condo market for a minute. Condo market was very sluggish through 2024 and into the start of 2025. The condo market, pre-construction condo market, has seen a big reduction in activity and in prices. The resale market has kind of been up and down again, depending on where you are. Inventory in downtown condos has gone up, as with condos throughout the GTA. prices have softened a bit. The rental market has softened a bit, which is a big driver for this condo market. I suspect that, we'll see that continue with condos for the next at least several months into the middle of 2025, if not a little bit beyond. So there are some interesting opportunities in condos. If you're one of those people that have been in your house, like I said, for 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and now you're thinking, all right, time for me to downsize or move to something smaller, there may be some great opportunities available for you in that condo world if that's something that you're looking for. So if that is you, shoot me a message afterwards and we can talk a little bit more about that and where some opportunities may be. The detached market through 2024 saw waves of activity. Now I know the charts don't show it so much, but I know that from what I experienced in the market. We saw things heat up and then we saw things cool a little. And really the market was a very, very up and down sort of thing as you went through the year. Some periods in the year were a little bit hotter, some were a little cooler. I mentioned off the top that seasonality of real estate. So typical, we talk about the spring market being the hottest, and then we talk about the fall market being the second hottest sort of times of year to sell a property. Over the last couple of years, that's shifted a little bit as we went through COVID. The seasons of real estate kind of averaged out. It was, you saw from that chart, it was just moving along every month because we were all here. No one was going anywhere. Now that things are kind of back to normal, people are traveling more. People's travels, kind of follow the school year because you travel with your families. So after the Christmas holidays, everyone comes back and things pick up as the weather warms up. As we head into the summer, into the spring, summertime, things cool off because people like to travel again and people like to get away. Although we've still seen some good activity, and then as school starts again in the fall, things tend to pick back up. So we've seen some waves of activity, but overall things have maintained at a fairly steady steady level of movement. The average price overall, like we looked at, is steady, which is unusual for that sort of typical economic supply and demand element that we look at, which what we can attribute that to is that underlying strength in demand. So as a seller thinking about going to the market and bringing a house to the market, it does give a little bit of confidence knowing that there is a pool of buyers that are sitting waiting for good properties to come to market. And when I say that, I say good properties to come to market, because when you come to market now, unlike 21 and 22 when we saw those peaks there, buyers are smart, buyers are picky, buyers do their research. So you have to be prepared and positioned in the market great. And that comes down to pricing, that comes down to preparation, that comes down to how you expose to the market, a lot of different factors, and all of those we're going to talk about very soon. So keep that in mind. Some of the notable changes that happened in December of 2024 that could play a big part in real estate as we move through the year. The amortization time. So we got a little bit of an extended allowable amortization period for first-time buyers and purchasers of new builds of up to 30 years, which is up a little bit from the 25 years. And the big one, which I bolded in here, is the CMHC limits. CMHC deals with mortgage insurance. So a typical mortgage, in order to get one, you have to have a minimum of 20% down payment on a property. So a minimum down payment of 20% to get a typical mortgage. You borrow 80%, you put down 20%. If you have less than a 20% down payment, then you will take what's called mortgage insurance, which is an insured mortgage, a system with the government where they'll insure that mortgage and you can put down 5% or 10% or something below 20%, but you were limited to a purchase price of up to $1 million. And at the end of last year, the government realized that it's not possible to buy that much property, or that many properties aren't available anymore below $1 million. So what they did is they made an announcement that as of December 15th, 2024, the limit to put down less than 20% is going to change from $1 million to $1.5 million. So now you can buy a house up to $1.5 million with less than 20% down. Now, why I think that this is such a big thing that I wanted to touch on for a minute, is because it can have a great impact on you as a seller and as you in the market. And why that is because take a look here. I have an example here, and I've put a couple examples together to kind of help have it make sense. Um, but typically, this is an example with a house for a purchase price of $1.2 million. And in the city of Toronto, we see homes and bungalows and detached homes and townhomes or semi-detached homes from a million to $1.5 million all over the place. There are neighborhoods all over the place where these are available. So if you're getting a traditional mortgage, putting 20% down, you're going to have a monthly payment of call it $5,400 a month. Um, and that down payment is going to be $200,000 or more. Having $200,000 or more saved for a down payment if you're renting or if you're living or have kids or a family is a lot of money to save. It can take a long time and it's difficult to live, especially with living costs and everything in the city right now, to save that kind of money. So with the ability to put less down gives the ability to buy a $1.2 million house, put down a little less money, and where I think the biggest opportunity is have some money available to do some updates or some renovations to a home. So a lot of homes in the area are now reaching, if you're south of, south of Steeles, let's call it in the 416, homes are reaching 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, if not older as you get farther south. So some of them will need updates. They haven't all been updated. So if you look at these examples here, you take a $1.2 million house with a 20% down payment. The down payment's $240,000. You have a mortgage of $960 and a monthly payment, call it roughly $5,900. If you're using all your savings, because that's what you have, if that house needs any work, there's no money left to do it. That's where we were up until now because that CMHC was limited. Now let's take a look at what we could do with this new rule that just came into place. If you cut that down payment in half, so you have a $1.2 million house, you put down 10%, which is $120,000. You're mortgaging $1,080,000 with a monthly payment, call it around $6,600 or $6,700 a month, which is $735 roughly more a month. You now have an extra $120,000 to spend on updates, renovations, or whatever work you want to do to that house. So what this is really doing is it's increasing the buyer pool available to those sellers to you with homes that might need a little bit of work that are under $1.5 million in the city of Toronto or in the GTA in general. So this, I think, can have a huge impact because it can increase the buyer pool looking with the ability to buy these million to $1.5 million properties, where before December 14th, none of these people had that as an option. So that's a new group of buyers that are coming into the market that we haven't seen here before that can have a great impact. That's why I bring that up. It's a big change that not a lot of people spoke about, but I think could have a big impact on our market, or at least for the market in that million to $1.5 million price point range. Um, Now let's talk interest rates for a minute, because this has been the hot topic throughout the year. Everyone's talking about interest rates. So for the last 6 or 7 months, we've seen every announcement, we've seen reductions. We saw quarter point reductions from the beginning, and then we saw a couple of larger half point reductions, and we've seen things start to come down. Uh, the the rates now, the bank rates, now you see it 3.25%, which is much lower than where it started at the beginning of the year. On the variable rates, interestingly, we've seen big changes in the variable rates in the market, but the fixed rates in mortgages, at least, we haven't seen a lot of change. So the difference being, the variable rate is directly tied to this bank rate. So when the bank makes an adjustment, they lower the rate, that automatically gets changed on a variable rate, and that'll affect, not necessarily your borrowed payment, but how much principal you pay versus interest in that month. And that can go up and down and vary depending on where the rates are. Now, if we look at these charts really quickly, just to give a comparison of where we are, and then I think it plays an interesting part with what happened in the market, is we see the 5-year variable mortgage rate. So you see here, They came, this is, 2022, we saw the lowest. There are people that have had a 1%, 1.5% mortgage. Then we saw things climb right back up. We were at just over 6% in some cases. And now we've come down a little. We're hovering just over 4.5%, in terms of a variable mortgage rate, depending on the bank and the lender, you get somewhere in that ballpark. Now, interestingly, if you look at the fixed rate that we see, this is the fixed rate line. We had a similar trend that went up as we saw everything else peak up. It went down, and you see it actually, at the end here, it actually tips back up a little bit. At one point, we were seeing it a little bit under 4%. Now it's back up over 4%, for the 5-year fixed rate. And this is because the 5-year fixed rate is tied more directly to larger economic scales and global economic scales, and the bond market and all that sort of thing. So it's not just the rate and fluctuates with the rate. There are a lot of other factors that this ties into. Now, I think, some of the slowness of moving of the market that we saw in 2024 is because although all of the news was rates are reducing, rates are coming down, rates are coming down, they still weren't down to where a lot of people had their heads stuck at 1.5 or 2%. We got very accustomed to that being a normal mortgage rate, which, as you can see, for a period here, we were at a low that had never been seen before. But that's not the norm. That wasn't a sustainable level. So now we've come back up. We're down, like I said, in that just over 4% range. There's another interest rate announcement next week, which my guess is they'll probably continue to bring it down. And as we keep creeping down, I think once we can get below 4, we get into the threes, mid threes if we can. I think that's when things really start to kick into shape and people really start to say, okay, now is the time we've got to jump in and we've got to get going. Inventory is a slow start to 2025. We haven't seen an influx in properties come to market yet this year. I think it's coming. I think there's a lot of people preparing and getting ready from all the people that I'm speaking to, from a seller's point of view. So I think it's coming. I think it's just off to a little bit of a slower start than we expect, but it's on the way. So keep that in mind. We'll talk about how that can affect you as a seller, as we keep moving on here. So let's look at some predictions. Let's have some fun for a minute. Let's say what's going to happen, and then we're going to jump into the selling. So interest rates, I think they're going to continue to go down. I don't know if we're going to see huge major reductions, but we're going to see them continue to come down as we go, at least through the first quarter, first half of the year. Fixed rates are going to be slower to move. Like I said, they're more attached to the global economic markets and the bond markets, so they will be slower to move down. But the variable rates, I think we will see start to come down, which will get people, I think, shifting to take variable rates more than the fixed rates, which we've seen as a trend over the last little while. Activity will start to pick up as we head into the spring market. I think the spring market starts mid-February. I know it's not quite the spring, but I think that's when the spring market starts to pick up. We're going to start to see more properties come to market. Like I said, the buyers are there. People are looking. People are out there and ready for the right house. Good houses, priced well and prepared. So I think we'll start to see things pick up in the next, call it 4 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. I think we'll start to see things pick up. Prices, I think prices, we see a healthy real estate year price-wise. I think we'll see steady growth through the year. I think if we see at the end of the year, we look back and we have a 5%-ish appreciation overall. That's a great year. That's a healthy year. That's a balanced market. I don't think we see any major shifts or spikes up, but I don't think we see any major shifts or spikes down either. I think we stay at a very level price-wise year with average appreciations over the course of the year, a healthy market. I think transactions will pick up, and I think it'll be a good year. Like I said, not a record-breaking year, not that 2022 red line we looked at a minute ago, but a good balanced year, and that's what we're going to see as we go through 2025 this year. And just to play a little bit, have a little bit of fun. Is real estate a good investment? Yes, this year is a 5% depreciation. I'm saying this is a fun chart to always look at. This shows you the next 35 years and over the last 40 years or so, what's happened to prices in real estate. People always say there's no way the average house will be $1 million. There's no way the average house will be $2 million, $3 million. Well, hey, look, I'm guessing we're going to have a 5% appreciation in 2025. This chart shows you two different options. It shows you a 3% year over year and a 5% average year over year of appreciation. And this is what happens to house prices over the course of the next 35 years. So even if we look at it in 5 year increments, we're down here right now at $1.1 million. That goes up, call it 10 years, we're hovering close to $2 million for the average sale price. And that's not, you know, the big house or the custom house or anything. That's the average taking into account the condos and the houses. So I think in Toronto, our real estate market has a great future. I think real estate is a great investment for your, owning your personal residence or as investments if that's something else that you might be looking at. But it's always fun to look at this and project where things are going over the next 10, 20, or 35 years. But we're here to talk about selling. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about what are we going to do? What do we do? You haven't sold a house before. You haven't sold a house in a long time. Where do we start and what do we do? So the first thing to do, you're here. And that's the best start. And I appreciate it. So thank you again for joining. But we've got to put a plan. You've got to have a plan of what do you want to do? You're thinking about selling, you want to move. What's the plan? Why are we moving? So are we upsizing? Are we downsizing? You've never sold a home. Did you buy your first home and now you want to buy a bigger home? You have a growing family or whatever the reason, or have you been in this house for 40 years and you don't need the space anymore? Your kids have moved out. So now you need to downsize. So what's the reason? What are we doing this for? Then we got to decide, where are we going? Are we staying in the same neighborhood? Are we relocating to a different part of the city or the country or the continent? Where are we going? Uh, is there a family change that's influencing the move? Does that help drive us? Do we want to be closer to kids or closer to grandkids, or what's the reason? Is there a family influence that's driving this move? Um, where are you planning to move? So is it relocating or is it within the same city or closer to somebody? When do you want to complete the move? So it's an interesting question. When do you want to be moved by? Not when do you want to list the house, not when do you want to hopefully have it sold, but when do you want to move? When do you want to be settled and sitting in your new place saying, it's done? That's an interesting question. So now we can work backwards and plan out our timeline to try to achieve that ultimate goal and get you into the new place by the time you want to be. Are you considering selling and renting? Have you lived in the house for 40 years? You don't want to own anymore. You want to retire and take your cash and you want to rent somewhere, rent an apartment and go sit on the beach for half the year. Is that the option? Then, we need to look at that and say, okay, what do I need to do to make sure that if I'm selling my house and renting, I'm still protecting the investment that I had and taking the money and doing something with it that, it's still going to work for you. Because we saw that appreciation chart with the real estate market. So if you're still invested in real estate, your money's going to grow. But if you're not, what do you do with it? And then the $1 million question that everybody asks as the first thing as they're starting to decide what they want to do is, do you sell first or buy first? And this is a really specific question that there's no blanket answer for everybody. It's really going to depend on your situation. Is selling first and knowing how much money you have making you feel more comfortable about then going out to buy something, although you may get caught where you haven't closed yet, but you have to be out of your home? And can you bridge that? Or do you want to know where you're going and have that set and then sell your house? And if you don't get quite what you wanted or the amount you sell for varies a little bit, that's okay. You're good with it. You've got a buffer, you've got a plan, and we've looked at the worst case scenarios. That's the real $1 million question that you have to answer for yourself. And like I said, there's no blanket that serves everybody. Everybody's scenario is different. Upsizing, it's easier sometimes in one way than the other, and downsizing, it might be easier in the other way. And that's something to really sit down and look at. It's something that we can sit down together and go through and look at the pros and cons and see which one actually makes the most sense for you. Because, like I said, it's different and specific for everybody. Of Well, looks like I have an extra slide here. There we go. Um, so let's talk now about the selling process. So you've decided that you want to sell. You've decided we're ready to go or we want to sell. What do we do? Where do we go? What do we start? We've never done this before. So the first thing to do is you've got to get prepared and you've got to have an agent. Well, you don't have to have an agent, but I obviously recommend it. Um, it's the best to have a professional working for you on your behalf and on your side to help you navigate this process. We're going to talk about the process, and yeah, you could take some of the notes from here and you can go out and give it your best shot. There is a ton of nuance in real estate. So there is nuance on every level that you go, from selling to negotiating to marketing to offering on your new home. There are nuances and things on every level, and having a professional in your corner working in your best interest will get you farther along and more successful, I believe, than not. And there are tons of options. In the GTA here, we have now, I think it's 70 to 80,000 real estate agents in on the Toronto Real Estate Board. Um, so the first step is to interview and to hire some agents. You know, you want an agent that's going to work for you, that's going to represent you well, that's going to negotiate for you, that has a marketing plan, and really becomes part of your team. And you form a team. They work for you as your team to help achieve these tasks. Um, and when looking at that, there's a couple key questions I think that are important when meeting and interviewing real estate agents to make sure that you're hiring the right person. And it might not be hiring your uncle or your cousin or your brother's sister's sister-in-law because they're a real estate agent and you know them. Yes, we all love to work with family, but you also have to make sure that you're having the best person represent your interests. Like I said right off the top, buying and selling a home or selling your home is for most of us, the largest asset that we have. We can't just trust that to somebody because we went to high school 35 years with them. We need to have somebody who's the best and could do the best job for us. So some of the things that you want to consider when you're meeting an agent, obviously you can look in the neighborhood in the area. You want somebody who's active and working in the neighborhood. The number one question that I think is important when meeting and talking to an agent um, is not how long have you been selling real estate for? It's probably the most common question people ask me when I get called in to interview for the job of selling someone's home. But how long I've been a real estate agent for doesn't really affect how successful I am or can be at working for you and getting your home sold. The important question to ask is how many homes do you sell each year? And it's a really similar question. It's not very different. But like I said, there are 70 to 80,000 real estate agents on the Toronto Real Estate Board right now. And probably 60 to 75,000 of them sell one or two houses a year. Maybe it's 40 to 50,000. Sell one to two houses a year. Now, any of those one to two house a year agents may have been in the business for 60 years or 50 years or 40 years, but they're not active. You want somebody who is actively selling real estate, who is invested. You want a full-time agent who is invested in the business so that they can be as invested in your home. And they can pull that nuance I mentioned, and they can pull their experience and what they feel is happening in the market and give you the best real-time advice on what to do with your home, from pricing to marketing to advertising to exposure to all of these things. Because, like I mentioned again off the top, the real estate market has its ups and downs, it ebbs and flows, it goes left and right, and can change daily, weekly, monthly, or over the course of a year. So you don't want somebody who sold a home in January and says, well, yeah, I've been selling real estate for 25 years and I sold one home in January, but I know what's happening in the market today. We need to be talking to people every single day in order to be able to give you the best advice. So that's why I say it's the most important question you can ask is how many homes do you sell each year? And you want somebody who is active, who is regularly working and selling homes. Then we can talk about what marketing strategies do you implement. You want somebody who has a good, proven, soundproof marketing plan. You don't want somebody who's just, I think we post it here and we throw it up there and see what happens. This isn't a see what happens sort of transaction. We need to know that we have a proven plan and method to get the job done. You can ask how they differentiate from other agents, right? All agents work differently. Everybody has a different style and different process, different personalities. You want somebody who matches with you but can get the job done. You want them to give you the confidence that they will be able to work for you and get you where you need to go. Um, Communication is a huge factor. What's your preferred method of communication? How do you communicate with me? How do you communicate with the buyers and the buyers' agents? How often do we speak to you? I think in the National Association of Realtors one year, one of the biggest complaints sellers had was that agents took a listing and they put a sign in the lawn and they disappeared until they got an offer. Is that the sort of process you want? Or do you want somebody that you know is working and keeping you updated and you see what's happening so that you know what's going on, right? Um, when you hire an agent, are you hiring an agent or are you hiring a team? Will you be working with the agent you meet, or is somebody else going to be working and helping you out along the way? You want to know that. You want to build a relationship with who you're going to be working with. Um, Online, Google reviews and references. Check Google reviews. Google reviews can tell you so much. Um, for me and my business, they're super important. I ask everybody that I work with to do a Google review for me because they help so much. Because they're the best way for real people to show how the process went with me. Um, so check Google reviews, check Rank My Agent. There's different sites where you can get information on people that can be really useful just to give you that little bit of extra information or that little extra nudge to say, oh, yeah, you know what? This guy seems good. This person was great. Ask for references. Call some references if you're so inclined. An agent should have no problem giving you a couple references to call. If they say no, sorry, none of my clients will ever talk to anyone else, something to wonder about, I would say. Um, Commission is always the purple elephant in the room. Um, no one wants to talk about it ever. How does commission work? So if you haven't sold a house, you may not know how commission works. If you bought a house recently, you didn't talk about commission because you probably didn't pay commission, because the seller pays commission, right? Your agent that represented you on the buy got paid from the seller's brokerage, and you didn't have to deal with that. So who pays who is one of the first questions they get asked when we talk about commission. Um, and theoretically, the seller pays the commission. The commission comes from the seller side. The way that our system has been developed and works, there are two sides to commission. There's the buyer side and there's the seller side. So you have a buyer's agent that gets paid a certain percent. You have a seller side that gets paid a certain percent, and the total commission that the seller pays their listing brokerage gets split up. There is no set standard or one way that this can be broken down. Commission can be negotiated, commission can be discussed. There's no one number or rule or law that we have in Ontario that you have to follow. So, yeah, that can vary. You can speak to your agent. Every agent will do things differently. I think the key thing when looking at commission and hiring an agent is looking at value. What are they doing? What are they doing to negotiate for you the best and get you the most amount of money, right? Ultimately, at the end of the day, the amount that you sell for and the amount you net are two different numbers. You need to focus on how much you're going to net. You want somebody that's going to do the best job for you and net you the most amount of money. Negotiating on commission either way a little bit, yes, can make a difference, but having somebody that's great and working in your corner can get you way more than any commission you're going to negotiate and save off. So something to think about. And when is commission paid? Do I have to write a check as the seller to my agent for the commission? And what happens if we don't sell? And what happens if we don't close? So commission generally is paid on closing. So we work for free until closing. You don't pay us up front. You don't pay a flat fee to start working and then something on the other end. Commission is paid on closing. So we sell a house today, we have a closing period, and on that closing period, once you get your money in the bank, we get paid from the proceeds of the sale as well. You don't pay before that. If the property doesn't sell for whatever reason, things become a little bit more complicated. But generally, we don't get paid until the property closes and get paid at the same time as you do. So those are the quick overview on the commissions. If anyone has any questions, again, please feel free to throw it in the chat, or we can talk about it after for a specific situation. But basically, you want an agent that should be able to provide you with a marketing plan and a process for selling your house that achieves the ultimate goal that you have outlined that you want to achieve. So a proven strategy, a proven method that they can show you that can get you from A to Z and get the job done for you. This is just a quick thing. So you see there, this was from a couple years ago, 64,000 agents, 25,000 did 0 deals. So it's not how long you've been in the business, it's how busy are you and how active are you in selling homes. This is such an interesting chart. It changes every year. I have to update it now for 2024. But you see there, under 10 deals is probably, close to 50,000 of the 64,000 agents. So 10% call it of the workforce does 90% of the business here in the GTA. You want that 10%. Let's bump over in marketing. So let's talk, hey, you've picked your agent, you've hired somebody, you're getting going. What are some things to focus on? What are some things to think about to make sure that you're looking your best and you're out there making the best impression? And I have right here, you only get one chance to make a first impression. You get one launch to the market, so you've got to make sure that you do it right. Everybody is online, so you've got to set yourself up for success online. Our world is a digital world now, so that all matters. So from preparation to staging to photos to curb appeal, everything about how your house presents and looks is super important. We have a couple places in general where we all market. Like I said, every agent does things differently. I'm giving you sort of an inside look at some of the stuff that I do. Some agents may do it the same, some may do it different, some may not do it at all. But I know what I do, and that's what I'm here to share with you today. It starts with preparation, staging, photos, and curb appeal. When we list a house, we bring our photography and our social media team in. So I don't run around your house with my phone. Can't see that there, taking pictures with my iPhone and then post them online. Absolutely not. This is a million or multi-million dollar product that we're selling. We invest in it as such. So we bring our team in, we do professional magazine quality photos, magazine quality video, magazine quality walkthroughs, floor plans. Everything is top level because we've got to look like we're putting this in Rob Report tomorrow, whatever it is. We want to make sure that it is as best as possible. From preparation, so we'll talk a little bit more in a second about the prep, but cleaning up, decluttering, staging if we need to, getting those photos done, cleaning up outside, all the different areas where you can touch up, and then we go live to market. So in Toronto, interestingly, we have one of the strongest MLS systems in the world. Our MLS system is so great because we have one MLS system here, like I showed you, for 64 or 70,000 agents. We all go to the same source. So we have such a strong network through this MLS system that it is an amazing tool that we have to use. I would not put a house for sale without using our MLS system. But from there are so many variations of what you can do to get your house exposed and get it out there. There's social media, so utilizing the professional photos and videos across all the platforms, right? So even when we bring our team in to do photos and videos, we don't just do vertical like you see here on an iPhone, but we have to do horizontal because YouTube and Facebook have different requirements for their photos and videos than Instagram does. So we have to make sure that we're doing everything to maximize the exposure and look correct on all of these different platforms. Social media is an amazing tool for marketing. Real estate is an extremely visual product, and a lot of these social media platforms run off of visual content. So that's why real estate and platforms like Instagram, Facebook, YouTube work really well together because they're all visual platforms to work off of. So making sure that you're out there And maximizing your exposure, doing paid social content, so paying to promote and boost ads. We do tons of collaborations with other accounts and different social media. You know, our photographers and our videographers, we collaborate with them because we all use each other's networks to maximize our exposure. Because frankly, I don't know who's got the best buyer for that house on the screen, but you can be sure that we're going to put it everywhere to make sure that where that person is, we're getting in front of them. We also have to maximize what's going on in the local neighborhood. So, you know, who's the best advocate for a house in an area other than the neighbors in the neighborhood, right? So we've got to make sure that we are marketing and advertising to our area, from distributing flyers, calling through the neighborhood, door-to-door outreach in the neighborhood. If we're doing an open house, inviting neighbors to the open house. We want to bring as many people and as many eyeballs to your property as possible, again, so that we find that one. People always say it only takes one buyer to sell the house. But you know what? If we can find two or three that love the house, it might serve us even a little bit more. And then we don't know where that buyer is. So we have to put it everywhere, and we have to turn over every rock to make sure we find it. And then network marketing. You know, we have huge networks of buyers and agents and brokers and all different people that people like me work with on a daily basis. We have to really use that network again to make sure that we're reaching out everywhere to find the best qualified buyers that we can, to do the best maximum exposure on your property. So really taking marketing and exposing it everywhere on a multitude of different levels is how we can really get the property out there and find the right buyers and the best buyer for you. I'll show a quick little video here just to have a little bit of fun, of a house video.
Hey, how many times have your kids said, I want my own swing set in the backyard? Well, here we go. I've got it for you. We are in the heart of Clanton Park, an amazing upgraded 3-bedroom bungalow situated on a beautiful 50 by over 130-foot lot, all ready for you. Come on in. Let's go check it out. I see.
So just a quick idea, you know, for me personally, I always like to try to do little fun things to grab some attention when we're putting videos out there. A, because you know, you never know who it grabs, and B, because I like to have fun with it. I think it's a great way to get some better exposure, and you never know how it works with the algorithms and things like that. So something that we always have to keep in mind. After that, the next number one thing, a lot of number one things we talk about, is home prep, which is where everybody gets caught and everybody has some stumbles. So we're going to talk about some of the key things to do to get your home ready for sale. And they don't all have to cost a ton of money. A lot of people, they go, oh my God, I have to spend thousands and thousands of dollars to get my house ready. Not necessarily true. So let's go down the list here and let's dig a little bit deeper. Number one, the top thing almost everybody has, almost without fail, is declutter, declutter, declutter. You want to make sure that you can take as much out of your house as possible. Nobody wants to walk into your house and have to step over stuff on the floor, or can't see the color of the countertop because it's covered with stuff, or see stuff falling over chairs and couches and things like that. You want to keep things clean and crisp. And you see at the bottom, I have an interesting question: is what's your favorite hotel? And you might look at that and be like, what is this guy talking about? Well, think about the last time you checked into a hotel, whether it's your favorite hotel or just really almost any hotel. Think about when the last time you checked into a hotel was. And when you first opened the door and looked around, what did that hotel room look like? If you can think about what that hotel room looked like, that's your goal of where you want to get your house to. You walk into a hotel room, everything has its place. Everything is placed precisely. The beds are made fresh. Nothing is lying around on the floor or on the surfaces unless they're supposed to be. Toilet seats are down. The toilet paper is folded up nicely. The Kleenex is nice. The towels are folded nicely on the hang bars in the bathroom. And you might think, well, that's a little excessive for what I'm doing in my house. And I say that is your goal. That is the upper bar of where you want to get to. How close you get to that and work towards that is up to you depending on time and how much work and everything. But somebody walks into a house that's prepared like that and almost has a sigh of relief or satisfaction because you're like, these people take care of this house. And that's the impression that you want to leave on somebody when they're coming to look at the house. Because once people have question marks or doubt in a house, that equals money. And we want to make sure people are comfortable and confident as they come into the house. So declutter, clean up everything is the number one thing everybody has to do. Number two, a fresh coat of paint. A fresh coat of paint is worth its weight in gold. Um, you might say I painted 5 years ago or whatever it is. Everybody has those marks when you walk down the hallway or your kids walk down the hallway with their fingers on the wall and leaves that little strip of just kind of darker dirt on the wall. Or once we get off of this call, go look right around the light switch in any of your rooms if you have light colored walls and see if there's a little bit of a difference right around where the light switch plate cover is and the rest of the wall. Some of these high traffic areas, you can't help it, but they just attract dirt. So a fresh coat of paint can really freshen it up. It gives a great new feel. You may not have to paint every room. You may not have to paint every baseboard and door and everything. But freshening it up a little bit can also give that sense of new and fresh and exciting for people. This is a new, exciting endeavor for someone. They're buying a new home. They want to feel that from start to finish. And then a professional clean. And I don't mean just sweep the floor and vacuum the carpet and get out. You want to do a good deep clean. One of the things that I always joke that gets overlooked every single time, again, after we're done, go look at the vents in your bathroom or the return vents to your furnace that are on the wall. And the chances are they've got lint or they've got cobwebs or something in them because we all have it, because it's those areas that we just overlook and we don't think about. So have a real deep clean, have things cleaned up, have the oven cleaned, have the microwave cleaned, clean up your fridge, your drawers, all of that stuff, because people are looking in that to see what's going on. And the more organized and clean and fresh it can look, the more they think, wow, these people take care of this house, and it alleviates question marks and concerns on everything else. Those are the three top ones. If you did those three to the max and stopped at that, you're winning. You're winning for sure. Now, they're also, and those three things aren't extremely costly. Decluttering doesn't really cost you anything. A fresh coat of paint, if you're a handy person, you could paint yourself or you can have someone come in and do it. And a cleaner, you can do a deep clean yourself. You can bring a cleaning crew in. Not a huge expense, but all three of those are a must. Those three things will definitely take you above the average in terms of being prepared. From there, we talk about staging and furniture placement. Excuse me. Uh, so furniture placement, if you've got furniture in the house and it's nice and it's modern and it's clean and it works, we can talk about moving things around to maximize your spaces, show how spaces can be used. Maybe take from some room that's a little over furnished and put some stuff in a room that's under furnished. An empty room, this is a tip that sometimes people don't believe, but an empty room always looks smaller than a furnished room because people need to see how the space can be used. Even in something as simple as a bedroom, somebody might walk into an empty bedroom and say, there's no way you could fit a queen size bed in here. But in 2 hours, I can have a queen size bed and two end tables there and a little bench at the end of the bed, no problem, and the room still feels spacious. We have to show people how that works sometimes. So furniture placement and moving it around and staging. So staging, can involve pulling out your furniture and bringing in new furniture. It can involve mixing some new furniture with your furniture. Staging also includes the accents and the fluff up and the little extras, the little accents, pictures on the walls, and things on some shelves that are placed like that hotel that you checked into, placed properly in a specific place that makes sense, not just thrown all over the place. So staging can run that whole gamut from major furniture, couches, tables, chairs, beds, to accessories, fluff up, different things like that, just to help give that sense of hominess and a homey feel. Um, Curb appeal. It's the first thing everybody sees when they pull up to your house. It's the first thing that they see when they look online for the most part. It's even one of the first things they see if someone's looking at a house. If I say, "Oh, you should go look at the house at 123 Young Street. It's amazing." What's the first thing you do? You probably Google 123 Young Street. How does your house look? And Google Street View. Now, you can't really help it or change it in some cases, but you can at least prepare it so when people pull up and show up at your house, the first impression that they get is good. And again, this can be as simple as in the summertime, keep the grass cut, keep it edged nicely, keep the weeds out of the garden, make sure everything is just trimmed up and nice. If it's wintertime, if it's cold like it is now, have the snow cleaned and shoveled nicely, have it salted. Part of me always thinks there's nothing cleaner than having snow all over the grass and having fine lines of where the driveway is and a clean lined walkway up to a house. It shows you that somebody took care in making that happen. And again, that can go a long way. So that curb appeal, how does your house look from the outside? Is it a matter of, your front door has been, banged up from bringing groceries in and the kids' hockey bags in and all that stuff? Maybe it's a paint job. Maybe it's cleaning some of that stuff up. What can we do to fix that up and make sure that it shows well? And number 6 is pets. Always a tricky one with pet owners. From a preparation standpoint and from a showing and a listing standpoint. With pets, you want to not have a sign of pets as much as you can. If you have a big dog bed in the middle of your living room, you want to be pulling that out. If you have a litter box for cats, you want to put that in a specific place because sometimes they can release an odor, or you want to make sure that you're on top of that. And not by just throwing air fresheners throughout the house, because that always makes people wonder what you're trying to hide, but really eliminating it from the source to make sure that the house smells fresh. People joke when you go into an open house and you bake cookies in the oven, so you have that fresh cookie smell. It's not necessarily going that far, but it's about eliminating those just question marks from the source at the beginning, so people don't have them and they don't start to think or worry about that sort of thing. That's pets from a presentation point. When we're doing photographs and video and all that to prepare, we want no sign of the pet as well, because we want it to look clean and fresh. And then there's the whole other pet element of showings, which we're going to talk about in a second. So those are the main things for home preparation. Like I said, if you can get those top 3 with those yellow asterisks done, you're winning the race. And then, the curb appeal is an easy one. The staging and furniture placement can always be discussed. You talk about it with your agent. I always like to bring in a stager. We get a consultation. We see how, what's it going to cost? What's the best plan of attack? And then we can decide how far to go with that. But keep in mind that favorite hotel practice. That's what you want to get to. You want to feel like you're walking into a hotel. Once you're done prepping it, right before the photographer comes to take pictures, you want to go out and walk back into your house and say, "Wow, maybe what are we doing moving?" Because that's the impression you want people to have when they come into your house. The next major factor is pricing. And as we were talking about the market and everything, I mentioned great houses coming to the market are doing well, and you want to be prepared and presented on the market. And the marketing is key, and the preparation is key. The next major factor is pricing, and pricing can make or break your listing as much as anything else. You want to price it right the first time. You only get one chance to make that first impression. So you want to make sure you price the first time and you do it properly and you look at it as a package, and you really want to do your research and have somebody help you that's doing your research. There's 3 important numbers when you're listing your property and planning. There's your list price, there's the estimated market value, and there's your sale price. The list price that you list at is your decision. You as the seller get to choose how much you're going to list your house at. As an agent, I can't decide. I can help guide and advise and give you the best information and advice, but ultimately you're signing on that to say how much you want to list the house for. The estimate market value is based on all of the information that we have. And as a professional, I have to bring you the best information to show you where the market value is of your house in your neighborhood and your housing type. And then the sale price ultimately is based on everything we've spoken about: our marketing, our preparation, our exposure, our first chance to the market, where that gets us, and ultimately the best sale price we can get with the best terms and closing date and all that sort of thing. So the sale price gets determined by all of our previous work, our marketing, our preparation, our pricing. Our estimated market value is determined by, we do a lot of comparative analysis to see what else has sold, what's similar sold, where they have sold, and how long ago, and kind of determine a value for that. And the list price, really, we determine based on that, but we get to decide that. And in here in the GTA, there are two common strategies for pricing that we see a lot. There's one which I call the traditional pricing strategy, which is after our market analysis and going through, we estimate your house is worth $1 million. The last similar house down the street sold for $1 million, and the one that's sitting for sale is listed just over $1 million. It's probably overpriced a little, so we think that the market value is $1 million. So we listed at $1 million or right around there. We go out to the market, and our goal is within a reasonable amount of time to get a good offer in at or very close to our asking price with all the best terms that we can get and sell for right around our estimate market value. Number two, the second strategy that's very common is the competitive market strategy, I call it, which is basically you see a lot of the time people list it at a lower than market value price and set a period for showings and then a date for offers. Generally, you have like a 5 or a 7 day window for showings. You have a date next week that we are going to accept offers at 7 o'clock on that date. Your ultimate goal is to get as many people through the house as possible, as many offers into the house as possible, have these buyers compete, and ultimately end up selling for the best price that you can get and also the best terms and everything. From a seller side of things, that process can be very fruitful and can definitely benefit depending on the market. As a buyer, it's not the most fun process to go through. But in Ontario, in Toronto, it's become not an expectation, I'll say, but an extremely common thing to see because of that underlying demand that we have in Toronto. People always say, buyers call me and say, I'm looking for a deal. I'm looking for something under market value. And I always say, it's tough because in Toronto, something that's priced low enough, instead of just selling for a cheap price, will get so much attention and interest that chances are it's going to sell for around the market value anyways. Maybe you get a little bit of a deal, but it's going to sell for around the market value anyways because of that underlying pressure. So great for you in a seller's position to be able to take advantage of that. Both of these strategies are good. There is a time for each, and those times can change and go back and forth. I know for me and with my clients in 2024, the beginning of the year, I was leaning more towards this one, the traditional. There we go. Halfway through in the summer, I switched it. We went down to number two, and we were doing more of the competitive market strategy. Towards the end of the year, flipped back and forth a little bit, depending on the house type and where it was in time of year between the two. So 2024 was kind of a mixed bag. If you looked back at 2021, 2022, like we were talking earlier, and you look back at sales there, I would say the majority, if not all of the houses that sold for above the asking price. And that's indicative of the competitive market strategy where you list it aggressively. Your aim is to sell for more, and you've got so much action and activity that it pumps the price up. But the key thing to remember when pricing, you see this little chart that we have here, is that your showing activity in your first launch to market is always the best. See this peak here, whether that's a week, whether that's 2 weeks or 3 days, it depends on the house and the market and everything. But you get one chance to make a first impression. This is your first impression window. So you want to make sure that you are priced properly. If you're not priced properly, this blue line goes here. You don't want that. You want it to peak. So you've got to make sure that you're priced and go out as best as possible, because the longer you're on the market, the lower that sale price ends up going and the lower the showing activity goes. So you really want to make sure that you do your research and you know where that estimate market value is. What's the market saying houses are worth in the area? And unfortunately, the market doesn't depend on the number you need to get because you want that in order to buy something else, or the number you need to get because you want to pay off something, or the number you need because you think and this and that and the other thing. The market thinks what the market thinks, and we can work with the market, but you have to look at it and say, okay, I understand what the information is saying and what the market is saying, and be honest with yourself. Not always you want to sell for this and the house is worth this, but to be realistic and understanding from the beginning will still help you get the best result in your sale. And it's not saying you have to sell for less than you should. It's just saying you have to be realistic and understanding in where the values are in the price. Now we talk about the listing period. So you've done all that prep, you're up, you're ready, your listing goes live, you're on the market. What happens? So you've got showings, you've got a showing period. We were talking, you list, that first window of activity is the peak. So you should probably be busiest in the first week or so, a week or two of your listing period. Generally, you'll have a booking and an appointment tracking system with your agent. We have an amazing system that we use where agents can book appointments online. As a seller, you can get a notification, you can approve it, you can deny it, you can try to reschedule if you need to. I always recommend be as open and willing as possible to get the showings, because any lost showing could be the one who's the right buyer for you, and we don't want to take that chance. Access to your property. So depending on how you set it up, typically we see a lot of properties. We have a lockbox on the front door. Agents that are coming to show get the lockbox code. In my business, I've taken it a step further. We have a digital lockbox that we use a lot of the time. It offers an extreme higher level of security than the typical lockbox. Basically, anybody who books an appointment gets a uniquely generated code. Once they visit the house, that code is no longer usable, so they can't get back into the house. With a typical lockbox, the code is standard. So once you have the code once, you have it always. So with our digital lockbox, which is very unique in our market here, not a lot of people use that, gives us the ability to provide that little extra level of service and security for people's homes. And then feedback and follow-up. We're always trying to get feedback and get information from people who've come to see it, because in real time, we want to know if we need to make any adjustments to how our house is prepared, to how our pricing is, to anything that we're doing. If we can improve or change something to overcome an obstacle or an objection, we want to make sure we're doing that. Again, with our technology these days, we have such a great ability to track and monitor when people are coming, where people are looking at our property, how they're seeing it. Are they seeing it on social? Are they seeing it on Instagram or Facebook or through our website? And if we see things happening, we can tailor what our marketing is doing. So if we see Instagram as a huge driver of traffic to our house, we're going to pump more onto Instagram and pay more to advertise on Instagram. If we see that, the sign on the front lawn and the QR code is getting the most amount of action, we're going to double up. We're going to put QR codes all over the place to get the most. So we want to really make sure that we're tracking and keeping an eye on that. From the listing period, some of the most common questions that we get asked, and I'm going to keep rolling because I know it's at 8:15. We want to keep this moving. Some of the most common questions while listed: can I be home for showings? The short answer is no, don't be. Sometimes people have to be, but generally buyers that are coming through your house want to feel comfortable. They don't want to have to walk around with their spouse or their kids or their agent and be whispering because they don't want to offend you or they don't want to say something and you hear. So really, if you want to do yourself the best favor, go for a walk around the block, go grab a coffee, be out for the day if you have a bunch of showings that day. Disappear, because it will make the experience for the buyers that much better. Do I need to clean up for showings? The short answer is yes. You want to have your house, the way you have it prepared for pictures is kind of where you want to be. Within reason. I know sometimes you got to jump out quickly and you didn't have a chance to fold the towels nicely, whatever it is. People understand that, but you want to have it as close to that kind of pictures of that hotel level as possible, because again, we don't know who the right one's going to be. How long will showings be? How much notice do I get? Generally, showings last for call it about half an hour or so. If it's a great showing and they're, loving the house, maybe people will stay a little bit longer, which is a great sign. If someone's in and out in 3 minutes, chances are they didn't like it that much or it's not for them. And how much notice do you get? That can vary. Somebody could be around the corner and see the sign and call their agent, or be with their agent and be like, oh my God, we got to see this house. How come we didn't see it? It just listed. And you might get some shorter notice. Generally, you want to get a little bit of extra notice, hopefully, just so you have time to do that cleanup. Will you be there for showings? That's a question I get to me. I know probably a lot of agents get it. With the system we have, and especially with that digital security lockbox that we use, a lot of cases we are not. Any buyers that are coming through have to be coming with a licensed realtor. That's how they get that code for the box. It goes through our system, and they have to be verified with a brokerage, and they get it through their brokerage. Um, but in order to get the most amount of people through your house, um, unfortunately, we can't always be there at every second. In some cases, we definitely can arrange to, so it will vary depending on the situation. And the number one question most people say is my stuff safe? And again, the short answer is yes. We track who's coming in. We have a record of who's coming in. But also you have to exercise caution. Don't leave, your gold Rolexes out on the kitchen counter when you leave. Put stuff away, clean things up, hide your valuables if you can, keep things out of the limelight, bring them out of the house maybe for the listing period, bring them to a family member's house or something. Be smart, but we don't expect or generally, I think, see too much of that, thankfully. But always, you want to exercise caution in that event. And then finally, you have offers. What happens with offers? We've been on the market. You get a call saying, hey, we've got an offer. When are we going to get an offer? What happens now? What do you do? So once you get an offer, obviously every offer can be different. No two offers necessarily will be the same. Everybody has different things from a buyer side that they want, and you have things you want as a seller. So that's where the negotiation starts. So you get an offer in. Obviously, one of the things you always want to do is make sure that there's no one else around who might be considering offering before you accept or sign something back, because you may lose an opportunity to get that competition in some cases. So, one of the first things we do always when I get an offer is I call everyone else who's shown it. We let everybody know that there's other offers. Offers will always come in with a timeline. So an offer will expire at a certain point in time. So you do have, in some cases, a deadline to work with. So you have to be cognizant of that and understand that and respect it from both sides. And work towards a timeline in some cases, which can vary depending on the situation. Do offers have conditions? Conditions are definitely a thing, depending on the situation. Some offers may come in with conditions. The 2 to 3 most common conditions we see, there's a condition for financing, so conditional on the buyers getting this value or this house approved by their lender, um, which is most common. Generally, we see it for about 5 business days. Condition for a home inspection. So they want to bring their own home inspector and do a once over of the house, see if there's any red flags that come up that they haven't seen or notified. In some cases, we can also do a pre-inspection before we list it. So we have that available to people in case they want that, so they don't have to do their own. It can save on some of those conditions in some cases. Ultimately, from your seat as the seller, we want to get as clean of an offer or as few conditions as possible. Other main condition, if it's a condo, we have a status review certificate or status certificate review, which basically looks at the inner workings and financials of the building to make sure a buyer isn't coming in into a financial mess and it's going to cost them a lot more down the road than they think. But those are the most common things. Will somebody send an offer conditional on them selling their house? Generally not a common thing anymore. That was a thing, back in the 80s, maybe into the 90s. It was more common that an offer came in conditional on a buyer selling their own house. We don't really see that anymore. Not very common. So not something that I worry about too much. If we accept an offer, how long do we have before we have to move? So that'll be outlined in your offer. Your closing date will be outlined in your offer. Typical timelines range on the quick end from about 30 days, on a long end on average to about 90 to 120 days. Somewhere in that window, call it 60 to 90 days, is a really common sort of range. It gives enough time in some cases for people to find something new or the buyers to sell their home, and get moved on, and get ready to move. So that's a typical sort of range between the date you sign the accept a firm offer, and the closing period. Do I get to use the deposit for when I buy? So if you're a seller, someone comes, they give you a deposit of $50,000. No, you don't get to use that money right now. That money generally is held in trust with the brokerage. So it's held in the trust account until the closing. That money goes towards the purchase price, but you don't have access to it until the property closes and you get the full payment for the property. How much deposit do we get is another common question. Deposit, there's no set rule, there's no standard. I would say on a minimum side, the average is about 5% we see. Sometimes people will want to give a stronger offer if they have some cash available and everything and give you 5 or 7 or 10%. The amount of the deposit, it goes towards the purchase price, but it's just a little sign of good faith. Um, it's showing their commitment to the deal. I mean, generally, even if it's $10,000 or 20, most people aren't just walking away from a deal, and leaving 10 or $20,000. If it's 50 or 100, it's even more reason not to. But that leads to the next question, which is what happens if the buyer doesn't close? Don't I get the deposit right away? It's a misconception that a lot of people have. The answer to that is no. If for some reason in an event you have a firm offer, the closing date comes and the buyers say, I'm sorry, we're not closing for whatever reason they come up with, that money continues to be held in trust until one of a few things happen. Either you can come to a mutual agreement. So the seller says, I gave you a $100,000 deposit. I can't buy it. Keep the 100 and I'm moving on. And you say, okay, we'll keep the 100 and we'll put it back up for sale. If we can't come to terms, then that money is held to help cover damages for any losses that you may incur. And then this can go to court. A judge can decide if there are any other losses or penalties that the buyer needs to be liable for. So if you sell for $1 million and then you sell for $950,000, the second time the buyer would be on the hook probably for that $50,000 plus any other expenses you may incur if you're carrying two houses, if you have storage you move stuff for. The list can go on and on. But just as a quick answer to the question, just because a buyer doesn't close, you don't automatically get to keep the full amount of the deposit that's being held. And going through, that's kind of from start to finish you decide you want to sell to the, hey, we've got an offer, we've sold. So I want to open it up now. If anybody has any questions, you can pop it into the chat. I'm keeping an eye on the chat right now and see if anybody has any questions. At the same time, if there are any questions you have or you're curious for your own home, in terms of a value, what's the house worth or anything like that, you can shoot me an email. You see I have my email address here. You can scan this QR code here. That'll open up a Calendly link. You can schedule a call with me, or we can schedule a visit for me to come by and take a look at your home, and give you an idea of value and talk about a plan. If you're thinking about selling and want to know, more detail in terms of whether it's the market, whether it's the timing, whatever it is, please, again, you can shoot me an email, you can give me a call, or book a Calendly online. You see here, I've got my email, I've got my website, got my phone number there. Feel free to reach out, and let me get out of the way here so that QR code you can scan. And you can book a time and we can get together and we can talk. No obligation. Kind of what your plan is and what the best solution may be and how I can help you best. If you're looking for a home value, like I said, feel free to call. I'm happy to come by and give you that. No obligation as well. I'm here to work as a resource, and help you achieve all of your real estate goals, in selling for the first time or in a long time. If there is anything from any other side, whether it's buying or investing, I'm happy to discuss that on a one-to-one basis as well. But having said that, again, I'd like to thank all of you for joining today. We had a great turnout. I'm glad everybody came, and I hope you enjoyed I hope you were able to take something a little bit useful, a little bit informative, educational. I hope I've answered some of those selling questions that you might have. Um, if you're a first time seller, not a long time seller, or just wanted to hear, what's the process and all that. I hope it's helped. I hope it's answered some questions and been informative. And like I said, if you have any questions, email, call, text, book the call, and you might hear from me just to follow up and see what you thought of this, and if there's anything we can improve for the next time. And stay tuned. Follow me if you can. Follow me on Instagram. Follow me on YouTube. We're gonna have a whole series of these videos tailored to real estate selling for the most part. Some stuff about buying, maybe investing and stuff like that. So stay tuned. Follow along. Join us in the series as we go through the year. And if you have any questions, I'm here to help. Again, thank you so much, everybody. I wish you all the best. A happy new year. I think we can still say that for the next couple days. And thanks so much for joining, and talk to you soon.